When you talk about the age of the earth in the Christian community, one question naturally arises, how old is things? And it seems to me, at least, that you can put a constraint on the age of the earth by looking at when did humanity arrive on the scene? When did Adam and Eve show up? And I know the scientific data seems to have a lot to say about that. What kind of fill us in on what the scientific data has to say?
Yeah, well, the way in which scientists try to date the origin of humanity is really with three separate approaches. The use of the fossil evidence, the use of archaeological evidence, and then the use of genetic variability for people around the world.
So we got three different techniques primarily.
Right, that are giving us independent insight into when humanity originates. And so from the fossil record, it looks as if humanity originates approximately 100 to 200,000 years ago. We've got very good fossil records that go back at least 50,000 years ago. It becomes more sparse the closer we get to 100,000 years ago. But
are we actually finding fossilized humans, or is it?
Yes.
We are fossilized humans back to 100, 150,000 years ago.
Well, about 100,000 years ago.
Okay.
When it comes to the archaeological record, the evidence for symbolism goes back to 70 to 80,000 years ago. This is based on cave sites that have been recently studied in South Africa that indicate, again, symbolism between 70 and 80,000 years ago, and that matches pretty nicely with the fossil record at about 100 to 200,000 years ago. And then
the cave records, that's the oldest one you find is the minimum age. You know, we could presumably find more potentially in the future.
Right, because we're dealing with the fossil record and the archaeological record as incomplete records. And so there's gaps, there's information that we need that's not there. When it comes to the genetic variability data, you can utilize two different genetic markers to estimate the age of humanity. One is mitochondrial DNA, which gives us information about the maternal lineage of humanity. And the way the inheritance works, it gives us information about essentially Eve. When did Eve exist? And Y chromosomal DNA data tells us about the paternal lineage of humanity. When did Adam live, if you will? And these two dates roughly converge at about 150,000 years ago.
So you got the fossil record going 100, 150,000 years ago. You've got the archaeological record kind of pushing 80 to 100,000 years. You got the genetic data coming in at the 100, 150,000 year range. So it seems like we're talking about a date somewhere between 50 and 150,000 years ago for the origin of humanity from the scientific record.
Yeah, that would be safe to say, and it's important to recognize that, again, the fossil and archaeological records are incomplete. The molecular clock analysis that you're using with genetic variability data is, again, imprecise, and there's a fair amount of uncertainty in those dates. So it all converges pretty nicely to an age of humanity that is much older than 6,000 to 10,000 years.
So let's say we've got 100,000 years then. How do we reconcile that with the genealogical data in the Bible? I mean, you can put a minimum age of Adam and Eve of 6,000 years, assuming no gaps, but you know, is the 100,000 year time frame comfortable with that or not?
I think it fits very well with the biblical text, because the tendency is to try to use the genealogies as these timekeeping devices. And I'm a biochemist, I'm not a biblical scholar, but as I've read biblical scholars who have provided information about how to interpret the genealogies, that scholarship seems to indicate that really they are not meant to be used in a timekeeping manner. They're really are theological constructs that are meant to communicate to us key members of the lineage from Adam to Noah and from Noah to Abraham. And so
they're more about establishing ancestry and who are you related to and who are you, more than when did you live.
Exactly. And you know, it's interesting that the scientific date for the origin of humanity is about 100,000 years ago. It's rather recent. It's not 1 million years ago or 2 million years ago, as the scientific theories, you know, previous to the current thinking, you know, held to.
Well,
so
that seems to be a real remarkable point, is that you've got the scientific data coming in at 100,000 years, and that's very consistent with what the Bible has to say. And I think that's a very important point.